It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Welcome to Retire Repurposed. This podcast is dedicated to help people transition into fulfilling and purposeful retirements. Retirement is a big life change. In fact, the two most dangerous years of a person's life are the year they were born and the year they retire. We believe that retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. Well, I'm your host, Jared Sebest. I'm the co-founder of Retire Repurposed alongside Ben Tejas. Thank you so much for joining us today. Maybe you're listening to us on the radio. Maybe you found us online. Regardless, head over to iTunes, find our podcast, subscribe, and better yet, leave us a quick positive rating and review. If you just take a moment and do that, we would appreciate that so much. Now, this podcast is all about retirement, but it's not about money. It's about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. Few people could just flip the switch from working a career 30, 40 plus years, shutting it off on Retirement Friday without methodical steps to living what we call a repurposed retirement. If you want more for your life and your retirement, then you have come to the right place. Well, on this episode, we continue our series on retirement habits. Healthy habits are important at any time in your life, but especially in retirement. Time is one of your greatest assets if you are a retiree, but if you have bad habits, that time will work against you. Today, we cover the habit of having social connections. Human beings were created to be around others, so engineering others into our schedules is key. In this podcast, Ben explains 5 specific layers of social connections that change drastically once retired, and he gives you ways to make sure these connections grow with time. Enjoy this episode. All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've got a great show. We are continuing this series on retirement habits, and we are going to talk about a very important topic, and that is this idea of social connection. So we're glad that you're here today. Super important topic. Can't wait to get to today's show. Before we do that, just a reminder, we've got a Facebook group called Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. Join a growing community of people that refuse to accept the typical American dream retirement. Look for more tips, exclusive content on living repurposed, Facebook Lives, Q&A sessions. Just go to facebook.com and search Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. Like I said last week, this is a great way to keep tabs on what we're doing, what we're saying. Our website, retirerepurposed.com, is a great way to do it. But that Facebook page, that is kind of the exclusive club where retirees can get together and really get all the content that we put out here. So make sure you go and join that group. Ben Tejas joins me on the show here today, and this has been a really fun series. We have been doing this now for several weeks. I think this is now our 7th or 8th show, but we've talked a lot about setting really good habits. And again, it's always a good time to have good habits, but retirement is a really, really good time to have good habits.
Yeah, such an important time, right, to form new habits potentially. If you're listening to this and you're not retired yet, don't think you have to wait until retirement to make sure you're doing some of these things. But I believe that with any time you're going through a major life change, it is so easy to slide downhill. It's so easy to kind of lose your footing, and like everything in life, we drift downstream, and unfortunately downstream, we know what comes. There's a waterfall, right? So we want to make sure that as people are coming into retirement and they are kind of having this major life change, they got more free time, engineer your day, create certain habits that make sure that retirement does end up being what you expect it to be.
We covered so many topics, from positive self-talk, reflection, movement. We spent a couple of shows doing what you just said, Ben, setting daily schedules, setting more long-term schedules. Last week, we talked about adding value. And just a little caveat on that, that is the crux. That is what it's all about. And here's the bottom line. When it comes to retirement, you still have to add value. But if you're going to add value in retirement, you have to be adding value while you're working. There's this we keep coming back to this idea that retirement it's not this black and white shift, or at least it shouldn't be. It should just be a continuation of your life. It just so happens now that work is being taken out of the equation, but we still have to be adding value. We still have to be using our time, talent, and treasure the way God intended it.
Yeah, so many people look at work as a negative thing, and there are parts of most people's day jobs that they would like to get rid of. But in the end, it does provide us with a great way to add value to our teams, add value to people that we're certainly providing a product or service for. It's just easier to make sure that you're adding value. Take that away. All right. And now you've got to make sure you're engineering habits that make sure, I keep track of the people I come in contact with. I make a specific goal of reaching somebody outside of my normal group of friends. I just help somebody. I pay for somebody's groceries. Whatever that might look like, engineer those adding value moments into your life, and you will feel better for it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I wanted to say. We did cover an entire show where we talk about how to bake those in to our daily, weekly, and monthly schedules. So if you missed last week's show, I say this every week. I mean, this is an important show. That was an important show. These are all important shows. So if you're a retiree approaching retirement, make sure that you subscribe on iTunes. Check out this whole series, but especially last week's show. That was really a good one. So today's show, we're going to talk about social connections. We're actually going to break this down into about 5 layers, but I've had this kind of in the can here for a while, and I wanted a chance to use this data. And so I thought today would be a great time to do that. Ben, I found some graphs online. I think I found them on LinkedIn, but these are actually graphs from the American Time Use Survey, and they're kind of a subset of the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. But they came out with some interesting, I would say, data, doing a survey on time spent with family, time spent with friends, time spent alone, time spent with partner, time spent with children. And me and you are looking at these graphs. And by the way, I'll go and post them on the Facebook page. So if you're part of the Facebook page, you can go check that out. I'll post links to these graphs that you can see. But some pretty interesting data as we kind of look at some of these graphs and what it's telling us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm keying in specifically on that time spent alone. I mean, there's 5 graphs. I think we should cover each of them a little bit, but that time spent alone, that's amazing. So it shows very clearly, you slowly increase. In fact, from probably your mid 30s until in your 80s, it is a gradual move upwards. And it just tells you that over time, as we get older, we tend to isolate more. We spend more time alone. And I think that is something that, while important, I mean, I know there's times when people energize by being alone. I know that there's people that can pull away and they can do that. What we're saying is make sure you just don't do it too much.
Right. Well, because the natural progression is that you will be more alone more naturally the older you become.
Yeah, I think, in the last couple of years, as we've seen, after the pandemic and people were almost told you have to isolate, right. That's why it was such a painful time for many people when, they're saying, hey, stay alone, stay away. And we're still seeing the effects of that. I believe we are. I mean, we look around, just talking with our clients and people that are coming in, they're like, yeah, I'm just starting to do more travel. I'm just starting to see more of my friends again. Right. And, I'm excited for that, but yet I know the pain because I've seen it, and I know what isolation does to a retiree. So it's so easy to get isolated, and we just don't want that for our clients.
Time spent with family, time spent with kids. These 2 graphs actually look about the same, where there's this kind of slow trail off again until you're about your mid-30s, and then it's pretty much flat all the way through about 85, 90 years old. What's that tell us?
Well, your time spent with your family, obviously, as you look at that, as you age and you leave your home, right? It kind of tapers down from when you're a kid in your 20s, and all of a sudden, and that's what we want, right? We want our children. Mine right now, Jared, I've got a daughter she's doing college visits, and I know that my time with her is somewhat limited. And then there's a point at which it'll kind of level off for her, and then she'll be like in your 20s, 30s, there'll be far less time with us. I think your time spent with friends. Early on in our lives, we are more active. We're going around doing things. It kind of tapers off, and it doesn't come up a lot. It's interesting. I would have thought that, all of a sudden in retirement, I've got more time, right? I've got more time to do things. I'm like, I'm going to go hang out with people. Right. These graphs, this statistics, this comes from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, does not show that. Right. It does not show that people all of a sudden in retirement become far more active with their friends, and I think that's a problem.
Well, I think that I was going to say that I think perception of that. I think the expectation of retirement is that I'm going to spend more time with family. I'm going to spend more time with friends. And the truth is that in the data, that's really just not what we're seeing. Time spent with partner, I thought this was really interesting. You actually will see an uptick after about the age 60, 65. Well, clearly, so now all of a sudden most people are retired. So now you start to see this uptick where it starts to go up. But what does that tell you, Ben? We're kind of smiling here.
We are, but I've talked to so many retirees that are like, I'm just not ready to spend so much more time with my spouse. I love them, but as you age, right, you start, and that's what the graph shows us, all this time together with your partner. And then as you age, there's things that come into your life that kind of slowly, I'm not going to say they wedge you apart, but they can. You and I are both young fathers, right? And kids tend to get in there and wedge you a little bit further from your spouse. Career gets in there and all these other things that are great things. But you spend more and more time, I'm doing like a V with my hands as you kind of separate, time with your partner. So and then bam, boom, you're together again for, all the time. And I think that can be a rude awakening for couples today who are both retiring at the same time, or one has been used to being retired and now all of a sudden the other spouse retires, or maybe one of the spouses was a stay-at-home parent. I have that a lot with some stay-at-home moms that are like, it's been great. I kind of had my mini retirement when the kids left the house. Now I'm plugging in, doing different things, and all of a sudden my husband's here all the time. And you hear that a lot. So I think it's just a word of caution. I mean, if we're going to go from, hours per day, it shows about 3 hours per day up to approaching 5, 6. That almost doubles the amount of time you're spending with your spouse. Yeah, it's pretty Get ready, buckle up, because if you're not doing it in the right way, that's going to be a very big life change for both of you.
Yeah, we're not trying to make light of this, but the issue is that if there's issues in your marriage when you're working, retirement may not be the thing that's going to make that better.
Potentially could make it worse.
Could make it worse. Yeah. Time spent with children, again, actually you see a decline with this, and this would be probably more specifically your children, not your grandchildren. But the truth is, again, I think the conception is once I retire, I'm going to spend so much more time with my children. And really data says that is not the case.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. In fact, it slowly goes down as you age. And I think some people, you'll hear that. People say, I'm going to retire. I'm just going to, spend time with my family. And that's what my plan is. I think these graphs, these charts will show you that actually doesn't happen. Now, can it happen?
Sure.
Are there ways that you can? We're going to talk about that. But I think this is telling us statistically that you actually spend less and less time with your children right after retirement.
Again, I'm going to post these graphs on the Facebook page. So if you're not part of Becoming Repurposed in Retirement, go to facebook.com, join that group, check out the graphs. They're really interesting, and I get kind of a kick out of looking at data and graphs anyway, but interesting stuff. So that leads us nicely into today's show. Again, we're going to talk about the habit of social connections. And in our process, in our class, Repurposed University, we have an entire leg of that class dedicated just to social connections, and we break it down into 5 layers: community, friends, family, spouse, and spiritual. So we're going to cover these 5 here today. And again, we're talking about them, Ben, in the context of habits. So first of all, let's just talk about the community, the importance of being part of a community and how that can be lost in retirement. But again, more specifically, how can people bake that into their schedule, bake it into their life so they have this habit of still being part of a community?
Well, I think number one, you have to realize that your job did give you community. So I think it starts there by saying, okay, I need to realize and accept the fact that my job built in a community. When I come to work, I know I'm going to see some friends. I'm going to see our team. I'm going to be able to work with clients, most likely, even if you had a job that was more, let's say you were blue collar factory type and you were just, working hard on the line or whatever, you still had break time. You had times when you'd be chatting with others, and there is almost always a part of community with work, which makes it so great. But again, the first step is realizing that work did give you that community.
And I think a lot of folks think when they retire, I'm still kind of part of that community. I was part of that company for 10, 15, 20 years, part of that group. I still kind of have that identity. The truth is that identity is lost once you retire, or at least it's not the same. So we've got to have a new community, but what can that community look like? I think automatically we go to a board or a club. It certainly can be, but it can be other things as well, right?
It can be so many small things, Jared. My grandmother, who passed away, still pretty sharp into her 80-year-old life. Her community was playing a card game called Schnozzle. It's a big game that's kind of like Buck Euchre, only way better. It's just a fun game that she used to play. And I know some people would typically say, well, it kept her mind sharp for all those years because she was, running numbers and thinking, the mental gyrations of playing cards. You're thinking through others. My grandmother, we call her Oma. Oma could play cards without ever thinking about the card game. She had played enough of that she would whoop you without even thinking about it. What I believe actually helped her stay cognitively strong through the almost the end. The last couple of years, it wasn't the case, but it was that constant social interaction. And it wasn't part of a board. She wasn't part of it wasn't no significant thing, but it was for her. She was learning about people. She was looking them in the eyes. She was conversing with them. That is so, so important. So even if it's something small like that, hey, every single week, twice a week, I've got a set-aside time where I'm in community with others. You need to keep that in your life.
That was the question I was going to ask you. What's the cadence? What's the frequency? It's probably not realistic to be meeting with a community, a different community of people, or a certain community of people every day. Is once a week, twice a week, or once a month? Is that okay, or is it more important to just be part of the group? What would you say to that?
Well, I think both. I think belonging is important, right? We belong to something at work. That's important in how we feel about ourselves. But I think it's weekly at a minimum. You've got to connect with others, and if you can put something there twice a week and build that schedule, maybe it's a day of cards and then it's a time out with them or whatever it is. I think that's very important.
I think of pickleball clubs, different classes, anything like that, where it gives you that. Again, maybe the right one is let's just call it weekly. It gives you that weekly cadence that you're connected with that community. I think that is really important. The next one is friends. Now, friends and community are different. Community is I'm part of a bigger gathering. Friends are I would say a smaller, more specific group of people that you probably know more intimately than people in your community.
Yeah, they're the people you turn to when something goes really bad or really good. They're the really close-knit group. Jesus had that, right, within his group of disciples. Even had a few that I think were probably the more trusted and the ones that he spent the time with.
Yep.
So we want to mirror that. And I think when you look at your friend group, there should always be somebody that you can turn to. So I think that person consistently, at least weekly, you need to be touching base with that person, probably even more than that.
Yeah.
Because again, and believe me, you'll think, well, my spouse is that. And we'll get to the spouse. I don't think the spouse is that person. I think you need somebody outside of your spouse that, if you're, I'm a guy, I think to myself, I need a man there, a friend who will ask me the hard questions. I spent a weekend here with a good friend up at the lake, and we were doing some ice fishing and stuff. And this guy asks me those hard questions. Something he said to me a long time ago, I'll never forget. He said, "Ben, are you keeping the slimy side down?" And I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" He's like, "Well, are you making sure that the things that you're tempted with in this world are not becoming a big part of your life?" And it's like, are you staying in the Word? Are you doing that? Well, my relationship with him is such that he can ask me those questions, and I need that in my life consistently. Again, that check and balance. So I think that friend, that close friend, that needs to be at least a couple times a week if you can pull it off.
My dad will be 80 this year. He still works part-time, and he has some flexibility in his schedule. And he says that he goes to his job and does his work and gets it done because at 8 o'clock the guys meet for coffee. And he's told me that many times. I go, "Why do you get up so early? Dude, you're almost 80." He's like, "Because I want to go have coffee at 8 with the guys." And I think that's really important. I think he does that 3 to 4, maybe 5 times a week, and I think that cadence is more correct.
Yeah, and I think again, we can hang out as friends and just go, fishing or play golf and just joke around with the guys. But the habit that I would be getting into, especially when we have more time in our schedule, the temptations get bigger and bigger. And what I'm talking about is many different things, whether that's things you're seeing on the screen, things that you're doing in your life. When you have time, the temptations get bigger. So I want that person. I want to have some fun with them, but I want them to be an accountability to me. I want that person to be somebody who can feel like they can ask me the questions. Are you treating your wife right? Are you treating your family right? How is, this next stage of life in retirement? Build those questions into that time.
Yeah.
And I think you'll really benefit from that.
And again, you got to be intentional with that, because naturally your amount of friends is not going to go up in retirement. So that's got to be something that's got to be on your radar as you transition into retirement. The next layer, so to speak, is family. And again, you mentioned this off the top, where it's like people think like, okay, I'm retired, so now I'm just going to basically live at my kids' house so I can play with my grandkids. And that's maybe not the best plan.
Yeah, I mean, did you ask your kids if they want that? Right. They may not, right? So I think every time you're engineering your lifestyle and retirement, it has to come on the other-centered person. So you're going to your family and say, okay, hey, I'm going to have a little more free time now. How can that best fit into your life? And then you say, okay, now I've got maybe you can even help your kids. Hey, son and daughter, why don't you guys go on a date some night, and we'll take the kids. Let's just engineer that in so we get more time with our grandkids. It's part of a normal routine, and they know, hey, every Wednesday or Thursday or whatever it is, every Friday night, we know we're going to our kids' place, we're watching the grandkids, we're doing something with them, and that allows them then to go out. But I think it starts being other-centered.
Yeah, well, I think it means, again, you said it, how can I add value? Opening the conversation. It's a double win at that point, because now you're getting the connection with your grandkids. You're giving your kids some time alone, which is probably what they want at that point in the game. So everybody wins, but it's got to be done with intentionality. If you go plan on just going and sitting at your adult children's house and hanging out, that may not be what they want. Let's talk about the spousal relationship. This one here is much different and a little bit more delicate than maybe our friends in our community.
Yeah, it's difficult because it's different, right? It's so new, and you're supposed to think, well, we were newlyweds and we'd love to have more time together. And then you get into that, and again, life separates us to some extent, and all of a sudden you're living with a stranger. The kids are out of the house, and it's just the two of us. Don't be surprised, and also don't feel like you've failed if that is a big surprise to you, and it is a shock to your relationship. So number one, I believe that many couples should do counseling around the time they get retired. At a very minimum, establish new roles, because things are changing. Neither of you have a job now, specifically if one of you worked outside the home and one didn't. But you have to create habits that say, okay, everything's changing now. My habit becomes now I'm going to cook twice a week. Now if you were the one that wasn't prior, I'm going to be the one that takes the trash out a little bit more. I'm going to be, so you start to engineer these habits into your life, because again, both of your lives are changing. Both of the spouses have to be ready for significant life change.
Well, I'm thinking even engineering a walk every morning or every evening. Now you're getting movement, which is a whole nother thing we talked about as well. And it gives you some time to basically connect for maybe 20 or 30 minutes a day. So again, it's how do we engineer our schedule to best fit some of these different habits that we're trying to create. I think that's a big one, and we could probably spend an entire show just on that one. We've got a minute or two left here. Let's talk about the final one, the spiritual. We've kind of touched on that already with one of our shows with the reflection and kind of the time at the end of the day to reflect. But this is, again, retirement is a great time to develop some really good habits to this kind of this faith side and the spiritual connection.
Yeah, I like to think, personally, I have a hard time many times engineering my days today to begin and end with time in the Word. In fact, I've got a joke I tell my wife. I'm like, honey, someday I'm going to have a boat in the Caribbean. I'm going to name it The Word. And then when I'm retired, I'll just say, I'm going down to spend more time in the Word.
Right.
She doesn't buy that, and we joke about it. But the reality of it is, sometimes when we are coming into retirement, the idea is, oh, yeah, I'll have more time someday I'll spend more time with God, and sometime I will do that. Number one, start it now. Don't wait. I'm guilty of that too. It's like we have to engineer our days to where we're spending quality time, both in the written word, but also time in prayer. Because again, like I said earlier, this is a life change. This is a huge life change. And the more life changes we go through, if you've ever been one, whether positive or negative, you have to start with having God in the center of your relationships.
Well, I sure hope you enjoyed this conversation on the habit of social connections. All 5 layers of social connections are so important and must be baked into a retiree schedule and handled intentionally. As we know, relational biospheres change drastically in retirement, so our hope is that your relationships flourish and grow, not diminish and fizzle. Thanks again for joining us today. If you'd like to get a copy of Ben's book, Repurpose: The Untold Story of Retirement in America, just go to our website, retirerepurposed.com. Until next time, I'm Jared Sebesta. Remember, don't retire, become repurposed. We'll see you then.
Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through an Avantax affiliated insurance agency.